So what do you get when you bring together the brilliant neo-noir filmmaking of Michael Mann with the dedicated talent and charisma of Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx? Well, you get this intense, introspective, and riveting thriller by the name of Collateral. Los Angeles cab driver Max takes his job of 12 years with meticulous pride, regardless of the temperament of his passengers. On this night, he sparks a heartfelt connection with Annie, a prosecutor with a heavy case ahead of her. Offering her his own sanctuary, a photograph of a desert island that doubles as an inspiration for his dream limo company, Max is elated by the encounter. However, his next passenger, Vincent, will bring him a night he'll never forget. The cover story of closing a real estate deal and offering Max a substantial sum to stick with him throughout the night is quickly dashed when a dead body crashes down upon Max's clean cab, and Vincent is revealed to be a contract killer. As Max is dragged from one hit to the next, experiencing Vincent's sociopathic psychology and twisted manipulation, this becomes a night that will not go the way either of them intended. With the corpses adding up to a major FBI case against Mexican drug lord Felix, both the feds and the LAPD are on the hunt to save the last of their witnesses. However, the steely exterior of Vincent begins to weaken throughout this night as he holds Max's own life as collateral, while the complacent, scared cab driver turns a corner of his own in a night that will end unlike any other. So released to cinemas on August 6, 2004, the Michael Mann directed Collateral was met with immediate acclaim and success, becoming to date Michael Mann's highest grossing film at the worldwide box office, garnering $217.8 million of a $65 million budget. And interestingly enough, this is the very first film Michael Mann directed that he did not have a screenwriting credit for, having that solely to the credit of Australian screenwriter Stuart Beattie, who developed this entire idea when he was 17 years old, having taken a cab ride from Sydney Airport, and just coming up with this idea of like a homicidal maniac being the one who jumps into the backseat of someone's cab, and just having that idea metastasize and such over the years, and develop that as he went to USC and tried to worked this draft as he brought it up to Julie Richardson and brought it up to Frank Darabont, who worked for Edge City Productions, headed up by Chuck Russell. And so all this stuff really kind of started to develop and motivate and move forward. It started off as maybe having HBO produce it as a bit of a more of a low budget type of thriller, but they kind of passed on it after a couple of drafts, and things kind of moved forward to the point where they got in the hands of DreamWorks. And Russell Crowe took some interest in the script, wanting to play the character of Vincent in the film, and after having worked with Michael Mann on The Insider, got him involved, attached to the whole film, to be the director of it. But as development on the project kind of stalled out after a certain amount of time, Russell Crowe did have to depart the film, and so Michael Mann went directly to Tom Cruise to fill the role of Vincent here, and kind of wanted to have Adam Sandler as the character of Max, but conflicts arose and other things came up and he had to depart the film, and so Mann brought in someone he worked with on Ali, which was Jamie Foxx, to fill the role of Max, and everything was really so much coming together perfectly for this film. For saying that originally was written to take place in New York, but Mann saw so much potential of setting it in Los Angeles, knowing the tapestry of the landscape and the cultures that weave in and out and make up the entire quality of what Los Angeles comes to be, and just the sprawling type of feel of it, the disconnected sort of thing that kind of makes up what Los Angeles is, having all that feed into the style, the context, the subtext of the entire film between these two characters and everything else that goes on throughout the entire course of the film. He knew he could take this landscape, integrate into the substance of the entire film, and make it so much richer. So of course a few more drafts went ahead and just came together into what we ultimately got with this film, and it was so much of that compression of time in this whole thing that you've got these two characters on this journey in this very narrow window of time, something like maybe like 8 or 9 hours or whatnot over this night that just attracted Michael Mann so much to the screenplay to begin with. They saw the fact that there's so much of an urgency involved in that type of thing, and also a sense of intimacy that kind of develops with that type of thing, with these two characters forced in a situation over this small period of time, unable to really kind of escape one another and kind of intertwined throughout the entire course of these events. He saw so much potential, so much of an energy into that idea that he just was captivated about what he could do with that idea and how to execute and just have it just flow so well. It's like such a nice thing that after you have some of these longer films in the 90s and whatnot, such as Heat and The Insider, this is much more of a leaner type of film. Nice sort of 2-hour runtime that just hits everything so tightly and so focused. There's so much richness to the content of the film that just comes forward in such a compacted, condensed type of way. It's so well paced, so well put together and constructed to have all this stuff just have that energy, that type of urgency in the story, even though you do have moments in the film where you have the characters of Vincent and Max have these introspective, reflective, and interesting conversations in that cab, but it just keeps propelling the narrative. You just have that driving force in the film that they're always on the move to the next thing in the whole film. And just how you have these two characters tied together in such a symbiotic relationship that so irreparably changes both of them, that each of them affects the other in such adverse type of ways as these events unfold, and just have such personal and wider spectrum type of consequences as the film goes on, as things are left in the wake of these two characters as they go through Los Angeles. You've got such interesting characters here at the helm of this thing, and two fantastic actors, starting out with Jamie Foxx, who ended up being nominated for an Oscar for his supporting role in this film, and getting recognition through Golden Globes and the BAFTAs as well. He very much was on the high point of things, where he also ended up winning the Oscar for his performance as Ray Charles in Ray. So this was very much on the crest of where he was really kind of hitting the peak of what he could really do as an actor at this time. And just like what he brings in this film is such an interesting character that obviously goes on such a great arc in this whole thing, that as the film goes along, you see with both characters here how the layers get peeled back upon their psyches and their personalities and all the things that kind of make up who they are and how they function or don't function in a certain way. And with Max, it's so interesting because you see him early on with the, just first off in the cab depot and everything, just him being sort of internalized in a certain way, very focused in on his nice clean little cab, his own little sanctuary of sorts. But when you get Annie into the cab and everything, you see the sweet charm of this character, how he functions, where he's right in his element and everything, how he's able to spark off this romantic quality between him and Annie, just like such a great rapport and such a great chemistry between Jamie Foxx and Jada Pinkett Smith. They're just like, it's so absolutely endearing and sweet. They just see such a great thing developed there with those two characters. You have something to just latch onto and kind of endear yourself to Max, but obviously as the film goes along, gets thrown as far out of his element as possible. You see the different qualities that really make up his psychological deficiencies in a certain way, the social awkwardness that he has, the lack of confidence, the things that he just like, the whole island limos thing where he wants to be able to jump right into the exact vision he has instead of just building it up little by little. He's this guy who thinks, he dreams big and doesn't want to start out small with the whole thing. It's such an interesting thing how this character is portrayed by Jamie Foxx, where you have such the depth of layers and the vulnerability of the character and the terror that he goes through in the film, trying to cope with the situation and try to adapt in a certain way as the film goes along. At first, he can't adapt to the whole thing at all. He's almost in shock after the whole thing with the guy falling on the cab and all that type of stuff. So he's trying to process this stuff, trying to work, and just not doing the right things as things go along. But Jamie Foxx's performance adds in so many different interesting qualities as the character develops through these adverse situations, and you just see him take on mannerisms of Vincent when he has to go in and talk with Felix and everything, how he's able to sort of process and deal with it and externalize things, and how this film just continues to go along and affect this character in such an interesting way that he is, from the beginning of the film, very much a guy who doesn't have the type of confidence, the type of backbone. He's this character who can't even ask Annie out on a date because he probably feels maybe she's kind of out of his league. But by the end of the film, he's a guy who can go up against a trained professional killer and have that kind of confidence, have that kind of drive, that kind of motivation to do something about it. So it's like, have that much of a stark difference in how this character transcends this entire film and just goes from one point to the next. Everything just develop. As so much with the screenwriter, but so much with Jamie Foxx's performance here. And when they go to the hospital to see Max's mother, because Vincent doesn't want to deviate from anything that's Max's normal routine to avoid any unwanted suspicions, it's such a very telling sequence for both characters here, because when you have Vincent kind of remark that she held you in her womb for 9 months, least you can do is buy her flowers, was like, it's such an odd type of comment that just kind of strikes you in sort of a blindsided type of way, and just like how he reacts to Max's mother when she starts to give him the adulation that she never gives Max. Obviously, she's always the someone who, like Max says later on, nothing he ever tells her is ever good enough. Nothing that he ever does is good enough. So it's like he never got any kind of respect or adulation from his mother. So when Vincent starts getting the shine on from his mother and everything, that's so much the trigger for what Max ends up doing. Just like, it's just a immediate resentment. Something that just like triggers him off, grabs that briefcase, runs out, does something terribly impulsive, and somewhat not like him, it would seem, from what we've seen up to that point. So many things are so very telling in these little moments in the film where you just see what it is that Vincent probably didn't have when he was growing up, that he kind of needed to not become the guy he is, and you see exactly what the upbringing was for Max that made him into kind of the wet noodle of sorts that he is in these situations and whatnot. You just see this character progress and move forward and fortify himself as the film progresses. You see such a great dichotomy, such a great parallel, and such a great chemistry with these characters. And of course, Tom Cruise delivers one of his absolute best performances of his entire career, playing a villain, which was not something he did all that often. Really only an Interview with the Vampire before this had he ever been the bad guy in a film. But with Vincent here, he's playing such a fascinatingly complex type of character, so psychologically defined and driven. It's such a fantastic thing to see Tom Cruise stretch those acting muscles and see what more he can do as an actor. And it's such a fascinating thing that Michael Mann is such a great filmmaker in the way that he assembles a portfolio of where these characters came from, where they grew up, all these little things about their backstory that a lot of it's not even really spoken into the context of the film, but it informs the actors about where they came from, how their psychological mindsets are forged and everything, and how and why they do things and how things affect them and why they affect them. It just creates such a richer type of thing for the actor to get involved in the character and have that come through in the nuances of what they do through the entire course of the film. And when you see Vincent at the start of the whole thing, this gray suit, the gray hair, the gray beard and everything, this silver fox, as Tom Cruise called it, as such a great unassuming type of figure that is designed for it to be as chameleon in a certain way as possible, to be something so non-distinct that if anyone were to see Vincent carrying out any sort of illegal activity, you've got such a bland description of this guy. Gray suit, gray hair, average build. There's a million of these guys in Los Angeles. Where are you going to find this guy? This unassuming type of figure that you see at the beginning of the film that has that little sense of mystery, a mystique that this character carries around with him, this enigma of sorts, that Tom Cruise has just the right amount of charisma and just threatening presence, all these little things he sprinkles into the context of the character. It's so beautiful what he does. You just see all these interesting ways of how Vincent works a situation, how he starts to sort of manipulate people and events and situations around him, how he uses a deception, a manipulation, all these little things psychologically with the character of Max there, that when, after he kills the gangbangers and whatnot and starts kind of chastising him about that, he kind of switches gears and starts asking about jazz and everything and trying to be all kind of a little bit more warmer and inviting and whatnot. It's like, it's such a interesting thing that you don't know where it's leading to until you get to that point in time where it changes the conversation with Daniel in the jazz club, and you just see how Vincent manipulates, and he's such a well-educated, intelligent type of character. It's such a wonderful way to see how Tom Cruise embodies all those qualities of the character, but you do see those cracks in the personality of Vincent as the film goes along, that when you get in that jazz club and they're talking so well, so passionately about the jazz and everything, just their love for the whole thing, and after he takes out Daniel, you just see that twitch, that twinge of Vincent, that he seems to start feeling something that seems so foreign to him, that it's something that this character has spent so many years just feeling nothing about anything, having no empathy, nothing of any sort of really emotional attachment towards anything. He really can't sort of process it. He can't really understand what's happening to him, but he's such an interesting character that you start seeing those vulnerabilities, the cracks, the little things that start to show the character is beginning to fall apart for some whatever reason. Whatever it was in his background is starting to surface and starting to finally come together. And as you see the film goes along, at a certain point, he should have just killed Max and just found someone else, but some reason, there's some emotional attachment, there's something there that in the back of his mind, it won't let him just go ahead and do that. He tries to constantly reason out somewhere in the back of his head to not kill Max and keep going with this guy for some reason. It's all these little emotional things that start bubbling up to the surface in Vincent that makes him such a absolutely fascinating character in this film. But to see how Max, as he goes along in the film and begins to build that backbone, starts to adapt, and starts to see beyond the lethality with the character and just sees the sort of pitiful guy sitting in the backseat of his cab, starts to decrypt this sort of enigma that's been haunting him all night, and starts to really see the hollow soul that's sitting back there and just understands that there's something missing in the makeup of Vincent. Just starts to push him down and just kind of pity him in a certain way, while Vincent tries to lash back and starts to grind Max down, but it just kind of fortifies Max overall to just take the action that he wants to take in these moments, and starts to just show that he's not afraid of Vincent anymore, that he's going to take a stand against this guy who's been running him through hell the entire goddamn night, and to see how they take every action possible to stand up against this guy, because he's just kind of sick and tired of his bullshit, his Twilight Zone reasoning for all this justification he has for killing people and being indifferent and not caring about all this type of stuff, being this sociopathic character in the whole film. Just doesn't give a shit anymore. Just is tired of hearing this crap from Vincent. He keeps spewing over and over again in the film as sort of this sort of almost defense mechanism in a certain way. So it's like, it's wonderful seeing these two actors bounce off each other so well and just have these great performances stand up as beautiful type of things in this film. And the rest of the film is filled out with such a fantastic supporting cast here, starting out with Mark Ruffalo as narcotics cop Detective Ray Fanning, who has such a fantastic way of looking at things in this film, that there's so many people like his partner portrayed by Peter Berg, or the FBI headed up by Bruce McGill in this whole thing, that have such a sort of narrow focus in the whole thing. They have a very bullish mentality about things. They're just kind of like, they don't want to have to deal with anything more than what they see right in front of their faces there. But Ray is such a character that you can see that, even though he is an undercover cop, so he looks like a street player and everything, but he plays everything so perfect as a cop, using the deductive mind to put all the little pieces together, find things, and trust his gut instinct about things, that certain things just don't add up about how everyone else is perceiving it around him, that they think Max is the killer because he says his name is Vincent, he's going to meet Felix. But all these little things that has come together with the character of Ray Fanning is such a beautiful type of thing, to see this character being sort of altruistic in a certain way, that he doesn't just go ahead with that narrow mindset, has a very open view of things, is able to absorb all the little details of what he perceives throughout the entire investigation of the film. He knows there's something larger, something more involved with this thing that he hasn't quite seen for his own face value yet, but he perceives something that doesn't fit, and you see this character progress through the film in such a wonderful way. Mark Ruffalo, fantastic actor, does a wonderful job here, and Jada Pinkett Smith, again, as Annie, does such a wonderful performance of this whole thing, right? Again, that opening scene with her is such a beautiful, touching, heartwarming type of thing, to see these two characters spark off such a magic between each other. She strikes such a strong impression, such a wonderful impression upon the audience and Max and herself, that you get this whole thing that you're reminded of her every little so often in the film, when Max goes to kind of look at the visor towards his island photo, but it's not there because he gave it to Annie, Or little things like when Vincent asks Max later on in the film, "You're going to call that girl that gave you the business card," and everything. Is like they drop the little hints that remind you in the film, so when you get back to the end of the film and Annie becomes a very vital cog in the entire plot of the film, everything comes back together, all the threads weave back into one another, and you just have this fantastic thing where she just so strong, so solid in this film. But two other really good performances in this film are Barry Shabaka Henley as the character of Daniel in the jazz club, who just does a wonderful job, just such a genuine type of thing, how he expresses the passion for jazz and everything, for this character of Daniel, telling this story about Miles Davis and how it affected him and kind of made this entire moment the conception of his life or whatnot, how it just made everything before not really mean anything, but everything forward just kind of driven by that in a certain way, and how little things they drop in there about how he kind of went to Vietnam and got into some other little things, kind of slyly kind of hinting about the criminal stuff he got into that he's hooked up with Felix in, and how things turn around that whole scene when Vincent reveals exactly what he's here for. The terror, the fear in this character, the dread in the character of Daniel there, portrayed by Henley. It's a wonderfully compelling type of thing, just the tone of it all, the weight that he gives, the gravitas of the moment, and just how it affects Vincent afterwards. Just beautiful type of stuff, just a pitch perfect performance from him. But the other actor is Javier Bardem as this cartel leader of sorts of Felix, who is a Spanish actor but had to adopt a Mexican dialect for the film, so he spent a couple of weeks for only like 2 days of shooting, but to get that aspect of the character just right, to have that come out so authentically, is so much a Michael Mann type of thing, to get that right on the money, exactly where the portrayal needs to be in every little nuance. He does a fantastic job just being so eloquent as his character, but with such a heavy, easy, threatening presence to him that he doesn't have to be overbearing. He doesn't have to sell it too much. It's just sort of understated in the whole thing, where he's telling that whole Pedro Nego, Black Peter type of story to Max about losing the list and all these type of things. You just get the context of it all. You get the feel for it all. What it's all kind of bubbling up inside of Felix, that he does get furious about the whole thing, and just like beautiful, intelligent type of thing that Bardem just, he's a wonderful actor. Everyone knows that, and he does such a wonderful piece of work in this scene. It just hits up every little beat to sell what this character is. Just see every little thing that goes into what makes up this entire background of the story here, that up to this point you're getting little shreds of information kind of pieced out to you here and there about what's going on and what's not going on. As you go along, you start to learn more and more about things. You finally get the exact thing going on here. These are all witnesses for the prosecution against Felix, and so it's a wonderful culmination. All the things really kind of come together there, solidify story element wise. It keeps you hooked in as you get a little piece of something here and there. It's a beautiful type of thing, how the characters inform the story so well, and just how everything just comes together so beautifully with the characters, the performances overall, and just Michael Mann's direction of actors is so impeccable. He knows exactly the details and nuance he wants to hit right there on screen. He put together a fantastic cast of actors who did remarkable work overall. And one of the most innovative things that Michael Mann did going into this film was shoot 85% of it on high-definition digital video using the Viper Film Stream high-definition camera to see into the night. Because he knew on film he wouldn't get the detail, he wouldn't get the depth of everything that he needed to get out of the night, get all that clarity deep within the background, all these different fascinating shots of Los Angeles at night, to get all that crispness about what he wanted to capture about the nighttime atmosphere of this film. And originally had cinematographer Paul Cameron on the film, but after he had some creative differences about the ergonomics of the entire Viper Film Stream camera and a few other things about it they didn't feel was the most easiest thing to work with, brought on cinematographer Dion Beebe to work on the film and complete the rest of the work on this thing. And a lot of people probably would say that the film has a very interesting, unique look, but I think that works so much towards the benefit of what Collateral offers here, where it did win Best Cinematography at the BAFTAs that year, And just like, it's such a fascinating film to look at. It's such a thing that kind of lights off a sparking, especially did me when I saw this film at a midnight screening in 2004 and saw this film. Just like the visuals of this film along with everything else, but the visuals so much just sparked something off so strongly with me that I wanted to capture images like this in my own film work or whatnot. Just like, it drove me so much towards that neo-noir dark nighttime type of atmosphere and the things I wanted to make. But it was such an interesting thing how they shot inside the cab of the film using this sort of reflective material that was used for like the screens on cell phones at the time, and have them custom made to kind of strip them on the Velcro in the back of the seats or on the roof of the car, the ceiling of the car, whatnot, to have the light bounce off in different ways and have different color temperatures, how they struck the actors in different shots and different setups and everything, and having this interesting rig that they have, like one rig for the front of the car, one from the passenger side, one from the driver's side, all these different little things. They are able to just create this entire mock-up of something to create every little shot they want, to set up different compositions between Max and Vincent, this whole thing, that there's some times where Vincent is a bit more vulnerable, that he kind of sits right behind Max, so Max can't see him when he's asking these questions or whatever it is, but when he's a bit more confrontational or whatnot, you see them on typical sort of left and right sort of shot or whatnot. So it's beautiful type of stuff, how they just cut up the whole frame or whatnot inside this cab to have all these different interesting little angles. They get off every mood, every feeling that they want to get, every juxtaposition between these two characters they want to hit off for the audience. But the entire film is filled with such great imagery as you go along in this whole thing. Just the action sequences in this film, they're so amazingly well shot, so expertly handled. And the one in Fever was shot on film because it was a much brighter interior, that it would work much more favorably with 35mm film than digital video could at the time. So selected the right tool for the right situation in the film, and just like everything to do with the cinematography just hits off such a beautiful, rich, and calculated type of thing. And feeding in so much of the sort of desolate, somber atmosphere that the cinematography so beautifully captures in this film is a selection of music that Michael Mann and his team assembled for this film, mainly with sort of composer James Newton Howard doing a lot of the orchestral type of work at the film, but adding in stuff from Antonio Pinto and getting tracks from like Audioslave and Tom Rothrock and Paul Oakenfold, who they did sort of a Korean remix of Ready Steady Go to fit into that Korean nightclub sequence, to just have all this stuff come together so perfectly for every little beat that Michael Mann wanted to make a film that had a very contemporary soundtrack to it, and they very much hit that off with a little piece of jazz, a little piece of rock, a little piece of this and that, and the overall package of the sonic experience of this film. The soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. It's just a wonderful mix of things that, if you do have different tracks of score from Antonio Pinto and James Newton Howard, like with so many other Michael Mann films like Manhunter and Heat or whatnot, it all feels like it comes together in the same vision. Everything feels like it works off of one another and feeds into the tone of each individual scene, but works so well in the overall cohesive package that there's so much contrast between different tracks in the film. Some stuff that's very sad and somber with the score, whatnot. Tracks like Shadow on the Sun from Audioslave that starts off in that coyote sequence. These two coyotes race across the street there, sort of marking their own domain in this urban landscape that doesn't really seem to matter to them. It's something that Michael Mann would experience every so often in LA. These coyotes just come out there. It's like, you're going to have to respect them, respect their space, respect their domain and whatnot. It's like these little interesting things that if someone who didn't live in Los Angeles, didn't experience Los Angeles, wouldn't get these little nuances of the experience of it all. But it's like, it hits there and has such a beautiful poetic quality that the film hits off every so often, and just the music fuels into all that type of stuff, and just has such an impact upon the film in general. It's so intrinsically linked with every single moment of this film. And like I said, the action in this film, which is not a whole ton of action, is much more focused on the characters and the drama and the thriller type of stuff. But the few moments of action that you get, first off, shows off the training that some of these actors went through. Like Tom Cruise worked with McGill, who Michael Mann used on Heat to train all of his actors and whatnot with some other people as well, working with the close quarters combat, choreographing everything out months in advance, working on it, rigorously rehearsing it to the nth degree to make it muscle memory, to have it just go off without having to think about it. You just act and react in these different types of ways, and just seeing the quick draw trigger on him when he takes out the gangbangers in the alleyway. That's just an impactful moment that just like, you hadn't seen him really kill anyone up to that point. That's the statement of the lethality of Vincent in that moment there, and it just hits such a wicked type of beat in the film, and just seeing as you go along, especially when you get into the fever club sequence, you just see how Vincent works a scene, how he works an environment, how he just kind of filters out all the other noise and zeroes in on exactly what he needs to in that scene, the bodyguards throughout the entire crowd, and to see Tom Cruise in the middle of those action sequences. One of the most dedicated physical actors out there is Tom Cruise, and he took on every little beat of that type of stuff. It works so much to make it as military authentic as possible. The fever sequence alone, it's such an adrenaline jolt in the film that just has all these characters coalescing in this one location, have this big explosion type of stuff, but then kind of strip everything away after that, have all the FBI stuff, all the other agendas, all these little things, all the Felix stuff, all these people get stripped away, and just like it's back down to just these two characters. And then of course Annie as well, but it's a beautiful type of thing how it's all constructed and put together and executed. There's such amazing brilliance in this film. It has all such great stuff, and just getting into that entire climax of the film where Jamie Foxx is Max, he's going off trying to stop Vincent from killing Annie once he realizes who the last target is. The desperation in the character, the motivation, the drive of the character, who didn't have any of that stuff at the beginning of the film. None of it at all. But now that he's had this connection with this woman and knows what's going to happen next, he's got to go ahead and do whatever he can to just not even think about it, just like react. It's just reaction with the character. It's a beautiful type of way to just construct it and just drive the characters forward and just have everything just hit off so beautifully. The character of Vincent just keeps barreling forward. It's like this, almost like a juggernaut in a certain way. He's beat, he's wounded, he's been in a car crash, all this type of stuff, but he just keeps barreling forward like a freaking shark in a certain way. Again, the tension, the suspense in that whole sequence where the lights go out, and then Vincent just kind of hunting, listening for little things that sound a little bit out of place, acclimates himself to the sounds of the entire building contracting in the cold of night and everything. It's just beautiful how Michael Mann just uses every single moment, every little shot, every little lingering moment of the whole thing to get you on the edge of suspense and tension or whatnot, and just like, again, strike it off in another chord there where Max takes that shot at Vincent, which is like, finally shows exactly what he can be made of when he's pushed to that limit, which Vincent is the guy who's pushed him to this point. That is fascinating that this is a character that Vincent gets to the point in this film where he creates his own worst enemy. That this guy who at the beginning of the film, that after he did those probing questions, found this guy to be not easy to handle, someone who's not going to be a problem for him in the film, gets almost irritated throughout the entire course of the film of how much of a passive-aggressive guy is. He keeps pushing Max forward to be more assertive, to take more of a stand against his boss or this, that, and the other thing, and gets irritated every time he has to pull him out of another stupid fucking situation, whether it's dealing with his boss, Lenny, the dispatcher, or when he's in Club Theater where he's got to save him from Felix's guys. These little moments of irritation where just like, he coaches him to the point where he actually creates his own worst enemy in the film. It's a fantastic type of thing that his irritation forces Vincent to push Max to become more of a stronger character, which is towards the detriment of what Vincent has to do in the film. It's a fantastic type of thing. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful culmination of these two characters bouncing off one another, impacting one another in such ways they can't foresee how it's going to affect either one of them in the entire course of this night. It's a beautiful type of thing to see that, and just like how it just keeps going on onto the MTA and everything, and just on that train, just building up to that final moment where Vincent is holding on to that strict sort of double tap shooting pattern that he's had throughout the entire film. So he's shooting directly forward into the sort of metal barrier of that door, while Max is firing wildly through the glass and everything all over the place. So you think that Vincent is a certain type of survivor in this whole thing, this strong personality, the guy who can adapt to everything, that in the final moments, it's not Vincent who adapts, it's Max inadvertently adapting to the situation, just guy who never really handled a gun except from 10 minutes prior or whatnot. It's just a beautiful type of thing that in this ending of the film, it has such a beautiful poetic quality. The film hits on, like I said, so many times throughout the entire course of it, where Max gets this story told to him by Vincent early on in the film, where he's doing this sort of probing question or whatnot, talking about how nobody notices in Los Angeles, people are sprawled out, disconnected, no one cares about anything, about this guy who gets on the MTA in LA, dies there, does laps around Los Angeles for hours on end. No one notices that his corpse is sitting right next to this whole time. Now he's at the end of the film, and he is that corpse. He is that dying, hollow, sort of pitiful body sitting on the MTA, not knowing what the heck his life was worth for. Not knowing what anyone's going to care that he died. Was his existence worth anything? Will anyone even notice he was even there to begin with? It's this sort of thing that he's gone through in this entire film, where an emotional resonance has started to build up in this character that he's tried to kind of shield himself from, but it's there. And in his final moment where he's wounded and he's bleeding out and he just has nothing left to give. He's got no bullets. He's got nothing. There's nothing left to shield himself from, nothing else to protect himself from. It's just like this final moment, we're just going to be as open and honest and as earnest as possible with Max. There's like, it's a beautiful poetic moment, and it's a wonderful thing that Michael Mann, most of that sequence is shot on the real train, but for like the last few moments or whatnot, it did shoot with green screen backgrounds to have very particular backgrounds in through the windows of the train there, to have a certain like slit scan type of directional image on the background when they're charging towards one another in the train. But in that final moment there, when Vincent just keels over and he falls dead and everything, you just have this black image of a tree kind of symbolizing maybe his soul just leaving his body. And it's the final funeral moment of the film. It's a beautiful type of thing to see how this character went through the film and how these events affected him in ways he never could have perceived possible. Both characters in general, but mainly Vincent there is like, up to this point, just going ahead of this one single-minded objective throughout the entire film, gets him to the point where he realizes it was probably worth nothing, and his life is worth nothing. And just like, it's a wonderful, interesting, fascinating thing to see a actor like Tom Cruise embody that and just get so enthralled by the character and the idea of it all, and is so captivated by what he does throughout the entire course of the film. Is such a thing you can't even touch in a certain way. It's like, it's so fantastic what he does, and how the characters ended there in the film. It's a beautiful arc, a beautiful journey these characters go on for the audience. But it just like, it's an amazing film. It's really an amazing film in Michael Mann's filmography that I feel like Heat is probably still a stronger film in general than this, because it has a wider tapestry to work off of, a much longer runtime, a lot more things going on with it to make it a much more stronger substantive film with a lot more characters, a lot more storylines and whatnot. But Collateral is such a unique beast in a certain way that there are other films that are not quite this. Some things like a Drive or whatnot might hit the kind of visual aesthetic in certain places, but you don't get this. You don't get these characters. You don't get this type of story, this compression of energy and urgency in the time that these characters had to spend with one another and go along in this thrilling, dangerous type of journey together. It's such a fascinating film to watch and experience and just have it kind of wash over you the first time. It's a beautiful type of thing, and I was such a rabid fan of this film when it came out. I actually found the electronic press kit CD on eBay, which had all these high-definition stills and poster artwork and trailers, even a trailer on it that you couldn't find too well anywhere, that had Alice in Chains' Man in the Box over, which is my favorite band of all time and is a fantastic song. And just like watching that trailer, because that song is so perfect for the film. It's just like Man in the Box. That is Max in this film. He's the guy trapped in this situation and can't get out of it. And it's like whatever happens within the course of this environment, it's just going to be adversely affecting him in every type of way. It's just like beautiful marketing for the film in general. And it's like they hit off so well with the poster artwork being so solemn and somber, and just kind of just hitting you with a single striking image. It's like, did such a great job marketing this film. Again, $217.8 million worldwide is nothing to be said about against $65 million budget. You might think that's a bit high for a thriller, but considering that they shot in Los Angeles, they're using this brand new high definition technology. Tom Cruise doesn't come cheap, and just like having all these set pieces, all the different locations they had to shoot in, all the great cast that they had in general, and just all the things they put together. It's a fantastic type of thing. It's worth the money they put into this thing. It just came together so magnificently well. But guys, Collateral. I know you guys got things to say. Throw it below. Thumbs up if you've enjoyed what I had to offer with this film and all this type of stuff. So I'll be back with other great stuff soon. And take care, guys. Love ya. See you later. Bye-bye.